welcome to this episode of HiStory Time with Norris the Noob. Today's story is of possibly the only man in history to be awarded the Victoria Cross and the Iron Cross. I know what you're thinking, Norris. How the hell did he manage to be awarded both? Was he a spy for both sides in one of the world wars? You'll have to listen and find out. William George Nicholas Manley was born in Dublin, Ireland on the 17th of December 1831. He was the second son of Reverend William Nicholas Manley. His mother was Elizabeth Brown, a daughter of Dr. Brown of the Army Medical Staff. Manley developed an interest in surgery and became a member of the Royal College of Surgeons in England in 1852. In 1854, Manley joined the Army Medical Staff and was attached to the Royal Regiment of Artillery, serving in the Crimea from the 11th of June 1855. He was present at the siege and fall of Sevastopol during the Crimean War and was granted the Crimean Medal with clasp along with the Turkish Medal. He was later posted with his regiment to New Zealand during the New Zealand Wars. Now, I'm not going to get into the ethics of right and wrong and the politics behind the war. This is purely about the bravery of a man faced with an enemy trying to kill him. In April 1864, the British were fighting the Maori near Tauranga, I apologise for the spelling throughout this, by the way, in the Bay of Plenty area of the North Island of New Zealand. The British Army had assembled a force of around 1,700 men, and the Maoris had around 500 at most, although the battle we're talking about, there'll be about half that. The Maoris built a hilltop fort known as Gate Par. There was a large defensive structure nearby that the British knew as the Gate, and it was built to halt the British advance. The fort itself was built to try to tempt the British into battle. Eventually, with only around 230 Maoris inside their wood and mud fort, the British attacked. On the map you can see that the fort in the middle was built across the road between Tauranga and Tiranga. I again apologise for the spelling. This was done deliberately so that a marching army would have to attack. Either side there's swampy ground and marshy areas, and it would take ages to go round, and you'd be all broken up and vulnerable to guerrilla warfare fighting, which is kind of what the Maori were good at. The British had several military artillery guns as opposed to civilian artillery guns, ranging from 6-pounders up to 110-pounders, along with mortars and rifled muskets. However, the fort itself was a lot more complex than first imagined, and had been built like a First World War bunker, surrounded by trenches but without the concrete. This picture is a sketch done from inside the fort. You can see rudimentary firing steps and parapets, and even right in the middle a kind of doorway that could be an entrance to a bunker type thing. They could hide underground away from all the shells coming in and mortars landing, whatever. On the left side of the picture you can see the ground slopes upwards. And this would have caused some of the shells from the guns to skip up over the fort. There's even accounts that for the first couple of hours of the firing, the range they'd set for the guns was inaccurate, so a lot of the early shots didn't actually land in the fort at all. They just sort of skipped over and missed, which was rather annoying for the single unit that had gone round the fort and was trying to creep up behind, the 68th, which you will have seen in the previous picture at the top of the map. Anyway, the point is, the fort worked a lot better than the British thought it would. Now, at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, they teach that a force attacking a fortified enemy should be around 3 times the size of the defenders. The Maoris were outnumbered something like 5 to 1, or even possibly 7 to 1. Yes. Anyway, Britain opened up with their artillery, but it wasn't as effective as first thought. A force of 300 men was sent to storm the Par, the fort, but when they got there they couldn't find the defenders. Some men were sent back to report that the Par had been taken, and that's when the Maoris emerged from their bunkers and engaged the British at close range with axes and shotguns. The British were using rifled muskets with very long barrels, which is not what you want for close fighting. The Maoris had been trained to target officers, and that's what they did. All the way up until I think even into the First and possibly the Second World War, and even officers quite often carried pistols, and they wore quite big shiny uniforms. Here I am, I'm a big officer. Nowadays, we finally learnt that everybody looks the same, everybody carries the rifle, and also an interesting thing I learnt in the army is that you don't salute officers in the field because that gives away who the officer is and you don't want them to be targeted. Although you're also told that he's quite often got a radio man with him, so you just shoot one of the two men walking along, the one that's not carrying a really heavy radio. But anyway, where did I get up to? There is one story of an officer that charged into the battle to try to rally the British forces and was immediately killed with a shotgun blast to the head. Around a third of the British storming party became casualties and the rest fled back to their camp. So where does Manley come into this? Well, his citation is as follows. For his conduct during the assault on the rebel Pa near Tauranga, New Zealand, on the 29th of April, in most nobly risking his own life, according to the testimony of Commodore Sir William Wiseman, in his endeavour to save that of the late Commander Edward Hay of the Royal Navy, and others. That's a really long sentence. Having volunteered to accompany the storming party into the Pa, he attended on that officer when he was carried away, mortally wounded, and then volunteered to return in order to see if he could find any more wounded. It is stated that he was one of the last officers to leave the Pa. So, he was a surgeon who volunteered to go with the 300 men that stormed the fort. He attended to a wounded officer along with any other wounded, and there were about 80 men wounded, and then returned afterwards to look for more wounded. Yeah. The night before the battle, the officers had dined at a place called the Elms, and William Manley was the only officer present at that dinner to survive the battle. There is now a grove in Tauranga named after him. His was the 317th Victoria Cross to be awarded. Manley took part in 4 more battles under the command of Sir Trevor Shute, and was again mentioned in dispatches and promoted to the rank of Staff Surgeon. Nearly said Staff Sergeant then. He received the Bronze Medal of the Royal Humane Society for rescuing a gunner of the Royal Artillery who had fallen overboard whilst disembarking from a steamer on the Waitatara River. Again, I apologise for mispronunciation. Okay, so that's his Victoria Cross story dealt with, but how did he then manage to be awarded the Iron Cross? In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. Manley was placed in charge of B Division of the British Ambulance Corps, which was attached to the 22nd Division of the Prussian Army. He was present at several engagements, and afterwards received the German Steel War Medal and the Bavarian Order of Merit. The German Emperor, William I, at the request of the Crown Prince, decorated Manley with the second class of the Iron Cross for his conduct in seeking for the wounded of the 22nd Division in the actions of Châteauneuf and Bretonzelle on the 18th and 21st of November, respectively, and the battles of Orléans and Crevant on the 10th of December, 1870. He marched with the division between 200 and 300 miles during the severe winter of November and December. So he was a pretty seasoned veteran. Going on, he was also present at the Siege of Paris, and on the declaration of the armistice, he went into the city with supplies for the hospitals. For his attention to wounded Frenchmen, he received the Cross of the Société des Secours aux Blessés, or the French Red Cross. So a pretty impressive military career by anyone's standards. What about his personal life? Well, on the 9th of February 1869, he married Maria Elizabeth Darton at Sheerness, Kent, in England. Her father was Thomas Hartwood Darton of Temple Dinsley, Hertfordshire. He and Maria went on to have 8 children, although I've seen other reports that say it was only 6, but anyway. 6 boys and 2 girls. One of his sons became a lieutenant colonel, and another was killed in the Boxer Rebellion in China in 1901. I think that son was killed just before Manley died in 1901, but anyway. In 1877, Manley moved to Cheltenham with his wife Maria, and she lived there during his lengthy periods of service overseas. He served with the Quetta Field Force in the Afghan War of 1878-9, and was present at the occupation of Kandahar, receiving the thanks of the Viceroy and the medal. To the Afghan medal. Manley was Principal Medical Officer under Sir Edward Hamley during the war in Egypt in 1882, and was present at the Battle of Tel el Kebir. He was promoted to the rank of Deputy Surgeon General and retired from the army in 1884 with the honorary rank of Surgeon General. In 1894, he was made a Commander of the Order of the Bath, and in 1896 he was granted a Distinguished Service Pension. I think he'd had a pretty distinguished service to earn it. On his retirement, the family moved to Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. He died of diabetes on the 16th of November 1901, aged 69, and was buried in Cheltenham Cemetery 4 days later. His medals are displayed at the Firepower Museum of Artillery in Woolwich, London. I've actually been to the museum. I was at the University of Greenwich for 3 years, and it wasn't until my graduation day that I actually visited the museum. Talk about procrastinating. It's kind of a big moment for me at the time because on leaving university, I was looking to go into the Royal Artillery and was fascinated by this individual, and I don't think I actually knew his medals were there, and I was sort of dumbstruck when I saw them. I'll include a picture in the thing. I apologise for the rubbish thing of the picture because it's taken with a phone. It's taken in about... when did I finish? About late 2014, 2015? And I sort of tried to get the picture and the medals in the same shot rather than taking one and then the other. So, yeah. I think it's his Red Cross medal, if I remember, had a red stain on the white fabric, and I made the mistake of asking the curator if it was blood. He gave me a kind of sarcastic smile and said, no, it's more likely to be wine. So yes, that was William Manley. Manley by name, Manley by nature. The only man in history to be awarded the Victoria Cross and the Iron Cross. Wow. Anyway, that was today's History Time, or rather this week's History Time. I've been Norris the Noob, and this was one manly individual. I mean, look at that moustache.